Here's some more solo pubbing, this time in the Centurion Mark 7/1. Probably one of my favourite tanks in the game, quite easily, definitely in the top 3. I've ended up on Prokhorovka from the north spawn, which is certainly not a bad thing. I'll be playing the north side of the hill, as I usually do in my mediums, particularly the hull down mediums, and hoping to get some decent damage in, as well as decent spotting damage, since I have optics and all the view range skills in this tank. My actual view range works out to about 473 meters, I think it is, so it's quite high. So I get lit early on by the enemy T-71, who knows what he's doing. In fact, ends up being a complete nuisance for most of the game, as does his platoon mate. Partly that's down to our AMX-13 and our other 2 scouts, who did very little to actually stop him from being a nuisance all game. But also a few times I was just careless about where I positioned. So one of our Lorraines, well, our Lorraine period, has already taken a hit from one of the light tanks. I think. It could have been audio, I wasn't really paying attention. And then he takes some hits from bigger things. Now, they're distracted at the moment, so I take a chance while I haven't, and then roll back down into a hold down position. Sorry for the stuttering, the game's running kind of dicey during this match. It seems to have affected the recording. So rather than sit out in the open, I decide to back off a little. Knowing I do have the edge over these guys in view range, I want to stay as far back as I can. We also have guys in the middle who will spot for me, so I'd rather undo it than have to risk doing it myself. Now, again, the auto-aim bug is still a thing in replays. That was a well-aimed shot at the 71. As you can see, the green pen marker is still on, so that was actually still aimed at him. It just whiffed out of the out of his outline. Must have hit the building next to him. T-54 pops up. Able to get a shot into his back end as it hangs out from behind that house. Looking for a shot here, which I get, into the side of his turret, just over the rails. He pulls back, he obviously doesn't want to lose that much health this early in the game. So eventually get a shot into the Chaffee, and then the 71 gets lit. Unfortunately, T-71s are a real pain to deal with. I was able to get that one by waiting for him to drive into my shot, but his platoon mate was a lot more difficult to get. I'm just gonna try and get this to run a little smoother. So I don't want to hang out near the edge of the hill too long. They do have a decent arty player, and they also have some big guns. On the other hand, I do want to get a shot into him before he can get another into me. The back of this hill is quite a good position for a Centurion. There's a lot of, especially if it's not crowded, if there's too many tanks up here, it can become a bit of a death trap. But since it's only myself and the heavy tank next to me, I've got plenty of room to play with. You can see I'm using the folds in the terrain here to only expose myself for as brief a period of time as I need to get a shot off, and then pull back into cover. I'm taking hits from the middle there. It's actually the T-71 firing at me. You can see he's having trouble actually penning me from that distance. He's probably hitting near the top of my turret, which is why it's bouncing off. But that is still a threat. I mean, if he pens, he can put out quite a lot of damage very quickly. And he's also spotting me for that party, which is not a good thing. Our team is slowly grinding down the 2 line. But we really need to do something about these guys on the hill and on the eastern side of the map in general. So I tell our AMX to spot mid because he's busy driving around circles in our own backfield. I'm not worried about the T-54 in middle, I'm worried about the 2 light tanks that keep getting shots on me without being spotted. So I'm really starting to hurt for hit points here. I want to pull back and avoid taking any more hits if I can help it. I need the AMX to lead off since he has more than me. Quite a lot more hit points than me at this stage. He's also a bigger target. People will probably be more inclined to shoot at him than me. So that T-71 is getting more shots into me. Thankfully, he's bouncing now. I mean, a couple more hits there and I would have been dead. All because our light tank didn't want to do his job. He was more concerned with staying alive than actually spotting the enemy light tanks in the middle. It's not good play. Not at all good play. Especially considering it nearly resulted in my tank going down. Which in turn could well have resulted in his flank going down, although our AMX is doing quite well. It still has all his hit points. T-71 makes a mistake and sits still, but unfortunately I whiff my shot just as he begins moving. I was getting quite frustrated at this point that he hadn't been dealt with, neither had the Chaffee. Meanwhile, the AMX apparently was frustrated nobody shot the T-95. The T-95 wasn't a threat. He was one of the worst players on the enemy team. He hadn't actually killed anybody yet. The real threat was those 2 light tanks, but, you know, I guess he just didn't have the awareness to pick up on that. Scrub my shot there. And the 5041 is actually repositioned down into the village. Now, he didn't see me, curiously enough. So I was able to pull back and get a decent shot at him there. Again, knowing the terrain, knowing the angles, I knew if I backed onto that hill, I'd have the right amount of clearance to get my gun over the hill and hit him. That's not luck, that's just knowing the map. So I'm waiting here for spots on something, anything in middle. But AMX really does not want to peek over that ridge. On the other hand, the 2 enemy light tanks have shifted to the western side to try and spot our guys pushing up the 2 line. That push seems to have stalled actually. And so I decide there's no point just sitting around here. I'll tell the AMX to head up the hill and lead the charge up there, use his hit points as a bit of a buffer, and then I can come up and provide assistance with my gun. You get one shot into the AT-15 there, bit of a snapshot. It's one of those situations where auto-aim's really handy, just for quick snapshots like that across the map. If I'd stopped aiming, he may have pulled into cover by then. Actually, I managed to track him there, but he is repaired before my shot gets off because obviously that didn't kill him. MX takes down the Persian. Chaffee finally goes down to the Roomba, and so I begin my push up the hill. I do still hang back because I don't want to take a hit while the 5120's still got all his hit points. But at the same time I want to be somewhere I'm actually able to get shots in and get some more damage, provide some more support to my team. So I'm sitting in this giant cluster of bushes, which should make it very difficult to spot me, but I still do have shots towards the enemy cap. I also have shots towards this tiger, although I head a bit closer just to make sure. Bit of a snapshot there, but it connects. I get away with it. And actually, as he drives past the train, I'm tracking his movement, so even if he gets unlit, I know that as soon as I fire, it'll hit him just like that. Unfortunately, he did begin turning right as he drove outside my render range, so I wasn't able to accurately predict if I could get another shot into him or not. But if people are moving like that, even if they're about to get unspotted or cross behind a piece of cover or something, it's worth tracking their movement, because quite often pubbies don't think to change direction, and you're able to do that basically. Kill them after they've become unspotted. Most of them don't even know how you do it. They'll scream hacks or have a little cry about it. my terrible driving aside, this has actually worked out alright. I could have been a little more conservative with my hit points, but honestly, the amount of damage I've done, which includes a couple of blind shots I should note, so it's over 5k by this point, I was pretty happy. I think about 3.5k of that was beyond 300 meters as well, so I was doing some pretty long shots. This is the kind of game you hope for in a Centurion, a nice, relaxed game where you're doing a lot of hold-down sort of long-range shooting, which is what the Centurion is absolutely excellent for. Just clean that guy up. Just for a touch more. 40 extra damage, I'm not going to pass that up. And I was hoping to be within render of the arty, but it turns out he was actually right in the corner of the map, which meant it was just too far for me to get render on. That's alright. I got plenty of damage anyway. Good solid match in the Centurion, just the kind you want to play. Really plays into the tank's strengths. Good hold down ability, excellent gun, superb accuracy. I mean, really, this is the kind of thing that you want in a tank. Either the speed and agility and high rate of fire of the Soviet mediums, as well as the camouflage obviously, or just the excellent flexibility and hold down of the Centurion. You know, it's kind of, there's two different kinds of mediums, the go fast, shoot fast, and the sort of good generalist. The Centurion's an excellent generalist, the Patton's a good generalist, perhaps not as good as the Centurion. The Soviet mediums are generalists in a different way, I would say. They're very good at most things, but that's more because they can sort of exploit the enemy's weaknesses a lot better. The Centurion and Patton can't appear on a flank without being spotted, for instance. They're big targets, you'll see them if they try and sneak around, whereas the T-54 can just appear behind people out of nowhere. But either way, of all the Tier 9 mediums, I don't actually think there's a single bad one, except maybe you could argue the Lorraine, because it's essentially a 5100 at Tier 9, and as a medium. The Lorraine actually used to be a pretty good tank when it was a Tier 8, by all accounts. It's just the up-tiering kind of killed it. So hopefully it'll get some love in the future. I mean, it is still a capable tank. It has a good gun. It's got a decent autoloader. It's just very big and very unarmored. So it's very easy to hit. It can't sneak around like the Batchat can. I think that's what kills it for most people. But, no, Tier 9 is quite a solid tier, quite honestly. There aren't very many bad tanks in it. In fact, if there are any bad tanks in it, which is one of the many reasons I enjoy playing it more than any other tier, really. Tier 10's giving a bit of competition for it these days, but Tier 9 is still my favourite.